Alright, so we're checking out your assignment turn-in for assignment 8 in VGD 151. The assignment is about squash and stretch, and you've got some really good squash going on here in the animation, but there are a couple of problems right off the bat. One is that when this peg here is hitting the ball, it is squashing, but you can see that rather than, let's see, if we take a look at the frame before here, we've kind of established that this is sort of the ground where the ball is sitting, alright? And then if we look at the next frame, we can see that while the stick is squashing the ball, it's also being raised up off of the ground at the same time, okay, before returning to that original position. The other thing we want to look at is, if we look at this from a different angle, we can see that the ball is actually floating up above the ground at this point, okay? So, that's going to be looking a little awkward from different angles. So, let's go through how we might optimize this animation, alright? And have kind of the same basic idea, but just, fix a couple of the errors and issues and make it just a little bit better, alright? So, first things first, we want the ball to actually be touching the ground. So right now it's floating in the air. So the first thing I'm going to do is just use my move tool, okay? And it looks like you have locked the move translation tool here. So we'll have to go ahead and unhide those and unlock those so that we can work with them. Alright, so I'm just going to make sure I have the sphere selected, and I'm going to come over to my channel box / layer editor. I'm going to go to edit channel control. It's going to bring up this box, and this is a place where I can decide which attributes I want to be able to see over here, and which ones I can put keys on, okay? So right now the ones that we currently can see and can key are right here, scale X, Y, Z, and visibility. So we want to go grab our translate from this list. Here they are, translate X, Y, and Z. Right now they're non-keyable hidden, okay? So we want to move them over to this keyable box. There we go. They are still locked, okay? So we can come over to this locked tab here. We can grab them and move them over to non-locked with this button right here, okay? So we've unlocked it. That's, great. So now we can move this down to where we want it to be. We can look at it from the side or the front or anything like that, just to kind of see where our ground plane is. We can move this down to the ground, okay, just like that. Now that we've moved it, we kind of want to establish this location here as its new sort of home base, alright? So what we want to do is freeze transformations, and what that's going to do is it's going to set all of these values to 0, okay? And the zeros will represent this location that we've moved the sphere to. For now, if we go ahead and set these to zeros, it's going to move the sphere back to its default home position, which is the origin right here, where it was first created, okay? So I'm going to Z back and set it back where I want it to be. So let's check out what happens when we do our freeze transform. I'm going to come up to modify with my sphere selected, and we'll hit freeze transformations. Okay, so it doesn't like that, and it's because my rotation is still locked. Okay, so that's just a simple matter of coming up to Edit and Channel Control, locked, and unlocking those rotations with the Move button there. We can close that. Let's try it again. Modify Freeze Transformations. Now it's not happy because we've got some values on the scale already keyed. Okay, so it's kind of a good thing before you start doing any animation to go ahead and decide where you want your original starting position to be, and to freeze your transformations before you begin your animation. So since we're kind of starting from scratch here, we can get rid of some of these keyframes that we have. Alright, so here for example, I can just go to a keyframe, right click and hold, and we can just hit delete to get rid of that keyframe. We'll delete these for now. And I'll just go ahead and get rid of all those keyframes. So it's still sitting right where I want it. So now let's go ahead. We should be ready now to freeze our transformations. So modify, freeze transformations. As soon as I do that, you can see these all popped to zeros. Alright, there are no more values in Translate X and Y. So now if I move this around somewhere, I scale it, I do all kinds of crazy stuff with it, I'm animating and it's over here, I don't know. If I decide at some point that, this is wrong, I don't really like it, I made a mistake, I want it to go back to its normal shape, or I want it to go back to its normal rotation, or I want it to go back to its normal scale, we can change that easily by just entering the default values in here. Okay, so if I want it to go back to its original position, that position that we chose for it, we can simply put zeros in Translate X, Y, and Z, and it's going to send it right back to that original position. Okay, we can put 1 for our scale X, Y, and Z to give it its original size and proportions, and we don't have rotate selected right now, so I'll go back to the channel control here and go grab those rotate values and move them over to keyable so we can see them. So I move the rotation, I can change it back to its original rotation just by hitting 0. So now it's back to this original starting position that we began with. Okay, so now we're probably about ready to start our animation. Let's take a look at the animation that we have on the stick here. Okay, so because we've moved our ball down a little bit, the stick is not coming into contact with it anymore. Okay, so we're gonna want to change that. Here as well, most of our values are locked currently and hidden, so we'll come back to our channel control and we'll bring those back out. Okay, translate values, scale values, and the rotate values. We'll move those back and we'll also unlock them just like that. Okay, so now we can start working with this again. So let's see what we've got here. Alright, just a simple down and back up again movement. So this will be pretty easy to replicate. So we can move this back a little bit, or just move this down a little bit. Okay, and do something like that. Because we don't have any keys on our translation here, it didn't really affect our animation very much when we did that. Okay, so it's alright like that, even though we didn't freeze our transformations beforehand. It's probably best practice to freeze your transformations before you begin animating, though, for the future, okay? This one will leave because it's, it's going to be okay for our purposes here, alright? So there we go. So of course now we need to go ahead and go about reanimating the sphere. So, one important thing, the other problem that we were seeing was that when we got to this point and we started squishing the sphere, not only was it squishing down from the top towards the center, but the bottom was coming up from the ground towards the center, okay? So obviously we don't want that. In real life, when the stick hits the ball is going to squish down, but it's going to squish down against the ground, alright? The bottom is not going to lift up, it's just going to squish against the ground. So what we can do to kind of fix that is to change our pivot point, alright? That's basically, we're changing where our manipulation handles are, so that rather than squishing towards the center here, we'll have it squishing towards the bottom, okay? So let's go ahead and move that pivot point. The way we can do that is just with our scale tool on. Just hold down the D key, D as in dog, and also at the same time hold down the V key as in vertex, alright, that's what that stands for. And you can then click and drag this little yellow center icon, and it will automatically snap to any nearby vertices. So I'm going to click and drag this towards the bottom. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that I can see better what I'm doing. Might even help to look at this from the inside. Okay, to zoom in inside of the circle. Hold my D key and my V key again. And I'm going to place it right here in the center on the bottom of the sphere. Okay? So when I zoom out, it should look something like that. So now, when I go to scale my sphere, rather than things squishing towards the center, they're squishing towards the bottom. So this is remaining now on the ground, okay? So, let's go ahead and start dealing with that. Basically, there's not going to be any animation happening until about frame 10, okay, when that stick first contacts the ball, okay? So at frame 9, this is a frame where we can go ahead and just key that scale, okay? Key selected. This will give it that original value to start with, okay? So it knows at this point, all the way up until here at least, it will stay perfectly round, okay? And then we'll start to see that squishing happening. So if we look at frame 12, this is where the stick is perfectly even. This is the lowest point in the stick's travel, okay? So after that, it's going to start moving up again. So at frame 12, we know this is the point when the ball is going to be squished down the most. So we'll squish it down. We can look at this from the side to make sure that it's accurate, okay? And that it's just touching the stick. Now, of course, just squishing it down isn't enough. Kind of like a water balloon, if you were to squish something like that, the water would need some place to go when you're squishing it down. So it would go outwards, it would just balloon outwards, okay? Because otherwise you're losing mass and volume, and our eyes are able to pick up on that sort of thing, okay? So whenever we squish it down in the scale Y, we'll also need to scale it up larger in scale X and scale Z, okay, to account for that mass that we've crushed. So we'll make it a little bigger. We'll try 1.3 and see how it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all three of these and key them. Just key selected. And we'll see how that looks. Okay. So it's squishing. Looks alright. Boop. And then the stick goes back up. and our ball doesn't, so that's a bit of a problem. So we obviously don't want the ball to travel faster than the stick. Okay, we don't want it to go through the stick. So we have to wait till the stick is kind of an appropriate distance to go ahead and change it back to its original shape, right? 1, 1, and 1 over here. So, 15 is fine. 14 might even work. And you can see 14 just barely touching it. So let's try that for now. We'll try 14. See that? We can always move it later if we think it's going too fast. Okay, and it is going pretty fast. You can see right there on 13 where it's starting to go through the stick. So we can either adjust the animation of the stick there, we can adjust the animation of the sphere, and I'll go with the sphere at this point. So, I've already got the key that I want. I just think it's happening too soon, okay? So I can just move it instead of deleting this key and creating a new key on a different frame. So all I have to do that is hold Shift and click on the frame I want to move. And then I can middle mouse button, click and drag this frame around, okay? I'll put it on frame 15 for now. Okay, so we'll see how that looks. Looks better. Now, one thing that you might notice that seems a little unnatural here, kind of clunky, is the fact that the ball is squishing down and it's coming back up, but then it just comes to a perfect stop, okay? Right there, frame 15, and it doesn't move anymore. It's just like, boom, done moving. It's not very natural because we've kind of established just by the stick hitting the ball that this is kind of some sort of flexible substance, kind of like rubber or something like that, It's squishy, it's bouncy, So naturally, after it's been squashed down like this, there should be a little bit of kind of a rebound or a stretch happening, all right, after this, okay? So it's going to make it look a little more natural if we add some stretch after, okay? So I'll come to about frame 17 here, and this time we'll stretch the ball out a little bit, okay? We'll grab my scale tool, we can stretch it up a little, doesn't have to be anything too crazy. And of course, if we stretch it, we're going to have to shave some mass off of the sides here. Okay, so we'll have to scale it in X and Z. That was a bit too much. Maybe try 0.8. Something like that. Okay, so now we've got this stretch going on. I'll go ahead and key those. Blink. And then of course, after stretching, it's going to revert back to its normal shape and just settle, okay? So we'll put it back at 1 at frame 19 here. Key selected. Alright, so let's see how that looks. It's a little more natural, but again, it's still stopping pretty suddenly. So, we can either move this keyframe a little if we want it to draw out a little more. Or we can, continue to add small keyframes later on that squish the sphere out just a little teeny tiny bit, a little less each time. Okay, we can key something like that. And maybe set it back to normal again on the next frame. It's these kind of subtle little wobbles that really will make your animation feel more alive. Okay? So you can kind of see the bounce that's happening there. Alright? So at that point, you know, this animation is all done, I'd say. You know, and you could go in and tweak different things about it, but, you know, that's pretty much the basic idea. So let me know if you have any questions about anything that we went over in the video today. Thanks for watching, and happy animating.